Hello and welcome to the 10th episode of Let's Play Planet Coaster. We're back in Project Utopia, once again working on the Rivertown section of the park. We recently just finished up the Enchanted Forest area with the large wooden coaster, the two flat rides, train station, and the eating area. And now we're actually duplicating all those, not duplicating all those elements, but I mean using the same elements and putting them into this area known as Rivertown. So, if you remember back to the last video, we had created the marketplace in Rivertown, and we had also created kind of the carousel base. And so we're going to be expanding on this side of which is deemed West Rivertown. So it's kind of the left side of the river here. You're looking from the right side of perspective, but when you go to the overall view of the map, it is actually on the more western side of the map. And what we're actually working on here is you'll notice that there are some buildings built kind of surrounding the marketplace and a place to actually eat because it's important when you have places to buy food that you have places to eat. And you'll see that I'm out here I'm actually going to be working on one of these buildings lying around over here because what I think I was aiming for with Rivertown is I want to go for that kind of colonial town feel. And I think when you see a lot of those colonial towns, like you're looking in like Colonial Williamsburg, or you're looking in, some of those traditional, maybe like Boston, Philadelphia, some of these like old timey kind of areas, you see a lot of kind of these different building styles back to back to back to back, kind of stacked up in a row here, and they're all fairly short, and they're all kind of residential homes and things of that nature. And it's more of a stereotype, but honestly, that's what's sometimes good to go for an amusement park. So you better help your guests understand the environment. So I think what this really is this is an attempt at that. So I'm using a bunch of different materials and kind of building right along the line here to kind of give it that old timey, but at the same time kind of dense house feel. You notice that the first building I built using wood, the second one was brick, and now this third one's I believe is also using brick. And so I'm kind of going into, I kind of like to use pattern here. I like to spice up what materials I'm using to try to make as much diversity as possible. And I think that doing this was actually not something super tasking. The one, maybe possibly one of the harder parts that I had to deal with later, especially, was now that that buildings in later parts of the park. You don't really need to build all sides of the building. You just need kind of the path pacing part of it. But in this one, you actually have to build both because if you'll notice, there's actually the train running behind it, and you want to make sure that you have everything covered where the actual train is going to travel. Now, so go ahead putting these roofs in the building. You'll notice that I laid most of the foundations before I even started putting the roofs on. This is mainly because I wanted to kind of get a feel for what the actual bottoms of the buildings are going to look like. I didn't want to make any major roofing stuff before because the last thing I want to do is put a bunch of building styles that required to look decent, at least required a sort of a certain type of roof, and then I was stuck kind of with like the two same roofing styles back to back. But it actually worked out okay. One thing I'm going to point out real quick, you'll notice here that I'm actually having some trouble with this roof here. That's because this building is actually split into 4 mini sub buildings because I really wanted to get that angle kind of going around the curb there, and it did not end up being 90 degrees, which was kind of a path planning issue on my path. And so I ended up with this kind of that weird angle in the back there while I was going ahead and putting all this together. That's something I'll later go back and when I add some shrubbery and greenery actually on the buildings and some of those wall climbers and ivy, things of that nature. That's something I'll go back and address at that time, but it's not something that I actually did now. Because what I wanted to do is I actually wanted to come back and I wanted to add greenery to this whole section. We'll actually get into a little bit of that at the end of this video here. You'll notice right now that I'm actually going in and I'm actually putting some of these roofs, again, as I'm putting some of these roofs on. And the cool thing about these brick buildings is they actually have these, like steeple looking things, which I think are actually quite unique. And they're not really an element you see in, common architecture anymore. It's definitely more of a Western kind of thing, but I think it does fit into this kind of older colonial era because we definitely don't really do that much anymore. Another thing you probably noticed that I just quickly did over there was that I took that flat roof when I put it on top of the building there. When I took the flat roof, I had to make 2 separate buildings distinct from it because what happens is Planet Coaster automatically conforms the concrete pieces, and then it'll kind of like put them right on the edge. So that what actually happens is the textures will conflict, and you'll have 2 textures that'll kind of alternate very quickly back and forth in between, which is definitely not a very realistic element. So what I do is I'll essentially put them there, disconnect them from the building, and slide them over just a hair. So technically, the concrete will still be in the building, but it'll just be off of the edge, so you won't actually be able to tell that it is off. They're not exactly flush with the wall. And then what happens is, since I do that, if I do it on one big building, it actually sticks out the other end, which is not what we want at all. And so I actually have to separate those, and there's a little bit of overlap on top of the roof, but that's not something that you really see very often. And I mean, a lot less than you see the actual front of the building. Top of the building is much less of an issue, so that's what I went ahead and did. You'll notice that I'm going in here now and I'm putting the roof on these buildings, and I went ahead and added 2 more there because I kind of wanted to, again, extend that kind of street line there. And that's actually the entrance to this area. You might have noticed quick. I know it was quick, but there was actually a place where the path changes style, and that's actually going to be quote unquote the entrance to Rivertown. There's also an Enchanted Forest sign, and later a Rivertown sign, not in this video, but off camera, later Rivertown sign as added with more buildings on the other side of the street to really fill in the ambience there. Make sure it all fits well together. Now we're gonna hop on over here and actually look at some of the greenery we do. This will give you a lot better shot of that picnic area I talked about for the marketplace, and then what more the final product looks like. Right now, mainly this is going to be all greenery, adding to the building facades that are kind of across from the marketplace. So you see I already added all the greenery over there, and these are the buildings next, like in between that little middle area next to the marketplace. So I wanted to put a lot of rocks here, really give it a more natural feel, kind of like it was built with the environment. It's been there for a long time, and again, old time colonial-esque feel. So a lot of rocks, a lot of greenery is going on here, especially some of the forgetting the name off the top of my head, but it's kind of this low-lying grass that I'm about to place here in a second that really sells, I think, the whole old building kind of style. I also placed a lot of different plants because I want it to look a little bit wild, but at the same time a little bit controlled, a little more controlled than the Enchanted Forest, that is, but still sort of a little bit green. You'll see that I added those picnic areas, which is actually a major pain because if you look at the ground there, those are actually ceiling tiles they're actually castle ceiling tiles, which got really annoying to place because of some of the weird angles there. So if you look at it closely, you'll notice that the pattern does not line up a good majority of the time, which really bothers me, but it's not really much I can do. There's not really something I can do about it. Um, Placing one of these bushes around here. You see I'm actually going to delete the stuff in this area right now and actually build a garden because I did want to, for the old timey, I was like, you know what, this garden's not something that's completely unrealistic here, and it's not something that does not make a lot of sense. You'll notice that when I was building those last buildings, I actually didn't add any windows or doors or anything like that. Um, those got added off camera, and they're something that I think is a process that's relatively simple. I think it's very easy to kind of essentially you place one, then you will. It's very easy with the control move with the advanced move feature in Planet Coaster. Essentially, what it allows you to do is use an XY grid. So instead of like having to like place items side by side and try to guess to make sure they're at the same height, I can make sure they are exactly on the same height by only changing the item in one direction at a time. So that makes a lot of the windows actually parallel. Now the actual spacing between them might not be exact, but at least like what two of the 3 dimensions will always be constant. Still going through here, working on some of the greenery. I did skip most of the coloring of the flowers because I think that can be rather boring. And now, last but not least, I'm going to be adding, again, some of that kind of like low-lying grass here. I'm not sure exactly. I can't remember exactly. Scaevola, I believe, is a lot of this low-lying grass here in front of the carousel. And I'm going to be adding a lot of plants and a lot of greenery there to help make it a little more realistic. So, have a problem. Some of the problems with this is some of this greenery stuff doesn't really conform super well with corners in the game. And I think that can be a problem sometimes. It's not a major issue. What's more of an issue is sometimes, the plant. Sometimes I do have this issue with plants. Sometimes plants, if you look at the bushes right along the carousel line, they all look identical. Back in Roller Coaster Tycoon 3 days, the plants actually used to kind of auto-generate a little bit more, and they'd shift the textures around and use probably a bigger texture template. And I think that has kind of gone away in Planet Coaster, which is really a shame because I think it makes a lot of stuff look uniform. Like all those bushes look uniform. You'll see that I'm actually rotating them around a lot to really make them look different. And I think, that was an oversight, and that's something that really was lackluster. Another super annoying thing when you're trying to recolor any of these plants, you have to be able to click on their base, which is really annoying because sometimes, especially if it's embedded in some of this lower lying grass here, it can be quite a pain to get to, and you actually have to move it out of the way, change it, then move it back. Definitely not my favorite thing, but that's all right. So this actually is essentially done with West Rivertown. You'll see that there's kind of those building facades over there to kind of hide the steep wall that's back there, covering up all the woods and things of that nature. And then there's kind of this open area here to the right. I'm actually going to leave that area open for now and possibly come back there. And that's one of the areas where, if I have the time, I like to come back and add some more features. Maybe a flat ride, maybe a small roller coaster, things of that nature. It's definitely an area that I like to add for expansion. So this can essentially will sum up West Rivertown. We'll slow down here and kind of pan out so you can get a good overview of what it looks like. Next time we'll definitely be hopping into the middle and east side of Rivertown because they're also very important as well. Thank you very much for coming to watch this video, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Goodbye.